everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am your host, Taylor Rockwell. Daryl Grove, still not with me in studio. If you've listened to the interview with Brian Sciaretta already, you will know that Daryl had chemo today. Caitlin Murray was covering the USA-Sweden game, so I did not expect to hear from her because it was very late over there. But that's why she gets paid the big soccer bucks, because Caitlin is going to be with me very shortly to discuss the USA's 2-0 win over Sweden. We look at some of the injuries leading into that game, some of the injuries coming out of that game, as well as what our expectations were for Sweden and how maybe they didn't quite meet them in terms of what we thought their game plan was going to be, but also the team's reaction to that result and just overall how the team is feeling and looking heading into their knockout round game against Spain. I did also want to take a moment to say that we really do appreciate the effort that Caitlin puts in, obviously to covering the U.S. women's national team just first and foremost, but also for taking the time to come on the show at such a late hour, having had, I'm assuming, a very long day, but still willing to give us all the info that we need to stay tuned in when it comes to the women's national team. So with that in mind, I'll just say thank you one more time to Caitlin Murray, and I will then turn it over to myself talking to Caitlin. Joining me now, all the way from France, our friend in France, it's Caitlin Murray. Hello, Caitlin.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. It is 8:30 thereabouts here on the East Coast at time of recording. By the sound of your voice, it's very evident that it's 2:30 a.m. over there.
Yeah, it's 2:30. These 9 p.m. local kickoff times,
yeah.
I think they're doing it for you and the American TV audience. Not great for the reporters. They're definitely not doing it for us.
See, I would enjoy that a bit more because, I'm selfish, except that we just had to do the U.S. men's game this week, which kicked off at 10 p.m. And I think we didn't get out of the studio until 3:30 in the morning or thereabouts. So I should have more sympathy for you automatically. But after that one, I'm definitely oof, I can't believe you're willing to talk to me right now. But I appreciate that you are, because there is much to be discussed. The United States get the win over Sweden, 2-0 over Sweden. They advance to the knockout round. They'll be taking on Spain. But this was the first match against a strong opponent at this World Cup. Was there any difference, do you think, in kind of the team atmosphere after this one as opposed to maybe the Thailand or Chile games?
Well, the players didn't debut any new celebrations, which maybe says something. I don't know. I think it was more of a business-like approach. What ended up happening is Sweden made 7 changes to their lineup for this game, and the U.S. also made 7 changes, but in the U.S.'s case, they were reverting to their first choice starting lineup, whereas Sweden was resting their starting players. So I think that maybe took the U.S. by surprise. But I think they were approaching this as this was going to be a difficult game. This is the barometer for the team. Everyone's been talking about they haven't been tested yet. This was going to be the test. And I think that's how they approached it, and they wanted to get a result. They seemed pleased with it. I think it's a different feel when you win 13-0 versus a game like this inherently. But the team feels confident. I think they're rolling into the knockout round feeling pretty good.
So I was surprised by that many changes from Sweden, 7, as you mentioned. I was also surprised by how open Sweden looked at time. I didn't quite expect that. But I can't tell if that's because that was sort of their game plan all along, was to go at the United States and maybe try to get numbers forward on the counter, or if that's only because the United States scored so early, Lindsay Horan scoring in, the 3rd minute, I think?
Yeah, I think it was kind of your quintessential game state situation. Once Lindsay Horan scores in less than 3 minutes, whatever Sweden was going to do probably had to change. They had to open up. I don't know if they were terribly crushed about not having won this game. The Sweden coach talked a big game in the pregame press conference about, maybe France isn't a team they want to avoid. He sort of made it sound like he thought that they would match up well against France. But then I didn't get a chance to go to the Sweden press conference after the game, but a Swedish reporter said that the Sweden coach said that they didn't care if they won the group. And you kind of wonder, were they trying to go for that easier path that we kept talking about the U.S. could be interested in? Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if Sweden was trying to put together their best game plan. But when a goal is scored, in 2 minutes and 40 seconds or whatever, that definitely changes things.
So one more question about Sweden then. obviously this is the team that eliminated the United States in the Olympics in 2016. So I think it was kind of built a little bit. Maybe it was like a more of a media thing as a like revenge game. Can the United States kind of show that they figured out how to play against a team like Sweden? Did you get any sense of that from Jill Ellis or from the players, that this was a sort of like stepping stone on the road towards like, okay, we've righted the ship, now let's keep going? Or again, was it just sort of business as usual?
Yeah, I think here in France, they treated it as business as usual. They insisted that they hadn't thought about that game, that they're only looking forward. They moved on. But back in May, before the final send-off game, Jill Ellis admitted that that game was sort of an awakening for her, that the world has become more tactical. She said that normally when teams sit in a bunker, it seems that are overmatched, teams that can't compete. And she said it took her by surprise that a team of Sweden's quality was willing to do that. And since that moment, she's been trying to figure out how to avoid allowing that to prevent the U.S. from being able to score ever again. She said they need players who are going to be able to, work the ball centrally, break lines, just add something more dynamic and unpredictable to the attack. So Jill Ellis admitted that in May. And then I think, once the World Cup got closer, no one wanted to admit that game meant anything to them at all.
That makes sense, I suppose. So then let's talk about like the game itself. Lindsay Horan getting the goal. Tobin Heath thought she got a goal. It sounds like it's going to be an own goal instead, or has been credited as an own goal. But I did think Lindsay Horan played really well. I thought Sam Ewis looked very sharp, had some really nice passes. I'm wondering, who did you think really stood out in this game, either positively or in a negative way?
Well, I do think it's interesting you mentioned Samantha Ewis, because Jill Ellis was even asked in the press conference, if all the players are healthy. I mean, we had a hip contusion for Julie Ertz, which I think is code for they wanted to rest her. If they have all their players, how does Samantha Ewis get on the field? And Jill Ellis has said that's one of the team's strengths, is the depth that they have. I think Samantha Ewis has been playing really, really well. She looked really good in this game. Rose Lavelle is a player that, you kind of notice as someone who does the things that Jill Ellis talked about learning that the team needed to do after that 2016 game that they lost to Sweden. I think it was a pretty good game overall. I think there were moments where maybe Sweden got in behind a little bit, and I think they could have done more with it. But overall, I'd say a pretty good performance.
I noticed those attacks as well, and it was interesting to me that it seemed like they were happening with relative frequency in both halves. So it didn't seem like it was a thing that the United States necessarily went in at halftime and sort of really focused on. The one adjustment that it did seem like they made was to have Lindsay Horan sit deeper a little bit more in the second half, and then maybe have Abby Dahlkemper slide over, so it wasn't quite Crystal Dunn staying so narrow like she was in the first half. But do you feel like there was any cause for concern, like heading into that game against Spain or looking ahead to France? Like, do you feel like some of the defensive questions have been answered, or are you still slightly concerned about maybe the overall ability of the United States to deal with an aggressive attacking team?
No, I don't think the defensive questions have been answered.
Right.
Because, I mean, Sweden has very good attackers, but I just didn't feel that the quality of the finishing was what you can expect against some of the teams that we're going to see later in the tournament if the U.S. makes it. A lot of the shots were right to Alyssa Nair, and that's not to take anything away from her. I thought, after that Chile game, she really only had one moment where she had to make a big decision, and she messed it up, and it could have been a goal for Chile if the player wasn't offside. So I think there were some concerns about her mentality and kind of her steadiness in goal. So I thought Alyssa Nair looked very present, and she was making the right decisions, but I just don't know that Sweden was enough of a challenge. I didn't think that the quality of the shots was good enough to really make me feel that those concerns are no longer a talking point. I definitely think they are. I don't know if Spain is the team where we're going to get all our answers. I think at this point we're looking at, the quarterfinal round is, when the going is going to get tough.
So sticking with that back line, I'm assuming Alyssa Nair is safe. But the back line, which today was O'Hara, Dahlkemper, Sauerbrunn, Dunn, do you think we see that same defense against Spain and then maybe against France? Or are you expecting a little bit of maybe experimentation in the defense against Spain?
Yeah, that's interesting. So you asked me in the last podcast we did, you asked me about the lineup, and I hadn't thought about it, so my answer was not helpful. And then when she did make those 7 changes before the Chile game, it didn't surprise me because that was actually exactly what she had done during Olympic qualifying. Jill Ellis started her strongest lineup when the knockout stage started. She almost completely rotated for the next game, and then for the last 2 games, she went with her strongest lineup. So if we use that as a blueprint, I'm wondering, this tournament is longer than the qualifying tournament was. So I wonder if we are going to see her do that again, where she's going to rotate, rest those players for the round of 16, because Spain is not a bad side. I think, the way we talk about them is maybe a little bit dismissive sometimes. They're not a bad side, but the U.S. should be able to beat them. And I think their second string should be able to beat them. So maybe you do rest your best players, ensure that they're going to be fresh and ready to go for a quarterfinal that's a little more difficult. I was impressed with Tierna Davidson against Chile. Taking corner kicks isn't usually what she does, but I thought she did a good job with that. So I wouldn't rule out some more changes. But Jill Ellis likes to keep us on our toes, so it's tough to say.
So I wanted to stay with Tierna Davidson for a second, because Daryl and I think we're a little more critical than I think some out there. I think I'll speak for myself here. I won't keep saying we. I felt like she was a little slow in possession at times, and I felt like she got caught in possession at times. But since that show, we've had a couple people say that we were maybe a little bit harsh on Tierna Davidson. So to hear you say that you thought she looked good makes me think that we probably were. So, but I would like to know, what do you think are like Tierna Davidson's strongest skill sets that she's bringing into the team?
Yeah, I think she is more of a defender, like a 1v1 defender, even though Jill Ellis has kind of used her in a fullback role and a center back role. This team is so attack first. I think she represents someone who can offer maybe more defensive awareness, and I think she has really good positioning. She is the youngest player on the team. She's 20 years old, but I think the way she plays, she seems very aware of kind of what's going on around her and the spacing around her. She is a younger player in the sense that I think when she does have maybe a bad moment or she's having a bad game, I think it can kind of get out of hand for her a little bit. I think, that experience of being able to play through that is something that I don't know that we can be confident that she can do. But I do think she's probably the future of this team, and she's going to be on this team for a long time. And I think defensively, experience matters so much, and she's so young that it's not surprising to maybe see her not always making the right decision. But I think she recovers pretty well in those moments, especially on a back line that doesn't have a lot of speed. So I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious what you think about her, whether you expect her to start.
I mean, it's tough. We had somebody ask us, if Jill Ellis did want to change it up, especially at left back, who would be the replacement, to which I think my answer was our starting right back and then maybe Tierna Davidson. So I think, I wouldn't mind seeing it because, combining, the last couple of things we've been talking about, I think you're absolutely right. And Daryl and I have talked about this too, that Spain are a little bit, not even necessarily wasteful in front of goal, but they tend to have difficulty creating chances. I say this now, they're going to jump out to a 3-0 lead against the U.S. But I think you're absolutely right that it's not going to be the strongest attack. That I think Sweden's attack is probably stronger, if that says anything. So I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Tierna Davidson come in and just see what she offers from a more defensive standpoint, just because Crystal Dunn did seem like, and I don't think it's necessarily even her fault. I feel like she did struggle a little bit with the positioning. She got pulled inside, and then there were gaps outside. Yeah. So maybe just to see what a more like natural left back does, or a more natural defender, I should say, does. I wouldn't mind seeing. I also wouldn't mind seeing Crystal Dunn start again. So I guess I am equally confused about what Jill Ellis will do. Although you certainly have far more knowledge than I. Hey folks, this is Taylor interrupting myself to let you know that today's episode of the Total Soccer Show is brought to you by FBref.com, footballref.com. You can get all the stats your brain might need, including ones for individual matches. That way you can know that, for example, Carly Lloyd was the USA's most fouled player against Sweden, despite only playing for a half. That's fairly impressive. Tobin Heath and Kelly O'Hara tied for the second most fouled suffered, so that maybe suggests that the United States were focused maybe on that right-hand side of Sweden as opposed to attacking down the USA's left. If you wanted to get an idea of what Spain are bringing to the table, the stats at FBref.com can certainly be of use as well. I went back and looked at their group stage game against Germany, which was a 1-0 loss, and was surprised to see that Spain actually had the lion's share of possession, 63%. Maybe less surprising is that despite that number, Germany still had more shots on target, 7-2. That disparity is even more revealing when you know that in terms of total shots, Spain had 16, Germany had 13. So basically, the gist of that, I would say, the distillation, if you will, is that Spain will possess the ball, create very few solid scoring chances, but will take pot shots whenever possible. So maybe if the United States stays compact, keeps Spain in front of them, they should be okay. We shall see. There's your very abbreviated USA-Spain preview. Certainly much more to come on that game as it comes closer. But until then, I'll just remind our listeners one more time that today's show is sponsored by FBref.com. You can get all the stats you need, or you can sign up for their StatHead newsletter to get all the stats they think you need sent straight to your inbox. One more time, check out FBref.com, FBREF.com, and thank you to FBref for sponsoring today's show. Now, less of me rambling and more of me asking Caitlin questions. You mentioned the injury to Julie Ertz, I should say quote-unquote injury to Julie Ertz.
Yeah, let's use those air quotes.
Yeah, exactly. Hip contusion, I think, as you said. But she seemed to be moving around pretty fine in the warm-ups or like in the pregame. I saw her walking around. I was like, wait, she's definitely not starting, right? And then she was there afterwards kind of jogging around, high-fiving. So it seems like she'll be fine. The bigger concern, I think, for lots of folks is Alex Morgan, who was withdrawn at the half. She did seem to struggle a little bit, in my opinion, but I'm assuming at least some of that was down to the knock she took in the first 45. What did Jill Ellis have to say about that change?
Yeah, she said it was because Alex took a knock. I mean, a knock is such a soccer term. I don't know if it's used in other sports. It's completely vague and means absolutely nothing. So Jill did say that Alex took a knock and she'll be fine, but it was just a precautionary thing. When Alex did come through the mix zone and reporters wanted to talk to her, usually she stops every time, but this time she said, I'm fine, which is basically like, I'm good, guys. I'm going to keep walking. So not able to ask Alex how she is. I would guess it's precautionary. There seemed to be a lot of precaution so far in this tournament with Becky Sauerbrun's quote-unquote issue. That wasn't an injury. And Julia's contusion, she was asked if she was going to be fine for the next game. And she said, she just sort of paused and said yes, as if to say, like, she's completely fine. So I think they're just being really careful about, not pushing players too hard in these games that, let's be honest, we can give credit to these other teams, but it's not as if the U.S. was struggling to get past these games or these opponents. And again, with Spain, you talked about their attack. They really have one player, Jenny Hermosa, who's, maybe a decent finisher, but I think I agree with you that it's the goal production that is the problem for Spain. So anyway, yeah, I think Alex Morgan is probably fine, but I'll have to get more and report back.
I appreciate that. I'd also appreciate if you could help me understand what position Tobin Heath was playing at the end of the game. When Kristen Press came on, they seemed to go to a 4-1-4-1. At least that seemed to be like the hand gestures I saw. But then, at least in the final 10 to 20 minutes, Tobin Heath seemed to have license to kind of go wherever she wanted. So I'm assuming that was a specific instruction from Jill Ellis, as opposed to Tobin Heath just kind of roaming around doing whatever she felt like doing.
Well, I'm going to be completely honest and pull back the curtain a little bit. As a reporter writing on deadline, you usually don't really see the last 10 minutes of the game. I was writing. I had to get that ready for the whistle for The Guardian. People are free to, check out my recap. I have quotes in there. So I didn't really see the last 10 minutes of the game, if I'm being honest. However, we have seen Jill Ellis move Tobin Heath to the central midfield late in games. That's something that she's done. It, wouldn't be surprising if she's done that again. She seems to think that Tobin Heath, specifically when Kristen Press would come in and take her place on the wing, Tobin Heath would go in centrally and kind of have more of this free role centrally. So I'm guessing that's probably what it was, but this is one of those instances where I'm going to have to go back or rewatch that game later.
That makes total sense. But that then begs the question, is there a point in the game when you're sort of praying that nothing changes? Like when it was 2-0 in the 75th where you're like, please don't score more goals.
Oh, for sure. I think there was a corner kick late in the game, and I said, I was sitting next to a reporter from the Telegraph, and I was like, Carly Lloyd better not score right now, because that's just going to change. I'm going to have to change, the score. I'm going to have to write something about it happening. There's definitely a point where all the reporters in the press box are just rooting nothing happens, whereas the fans are rooting, for a close game. They want to see more goals. So, we're the anti-fun people.
The anti-fun. I appreciate that. I like that. That's what you got to be, right? There's no cheering in the press box, and you can, I guess that allows for active cheering against goals. Yes, of course. So what's next for you then in terms of your schedule in France, and then what's next for the U.S. in terms of their preparations for Spain?
Yeah, so tomorrow, I think around noon, all the reporters are going to load up on our reporter bus. It's sort of like summer camp for journalists. We're going to get on the bus and head over to Reims. They pronounce it Reims or something like that. So we're going back to the site of where the U.S. demolished Thailand 13-0. So that's going to be fun. We haven't gotten the schedule for training or media availability yet. But tomorrow will be a travel day, and then training will resume, and we'll have a chance to talk to the players, get some updates on injuries, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's 2:45 a.m. right now, so after I'm done here, I'm going to pack so I can head to the next city.
I would like to not be the reason why you fall asleep packing and then miss the bus, and then the United States somehow ends up losing the World Cup because of it. I'm sure that's all related in chaos theory, butterfly wings sort of thing. So I will just end here, but I will say, Caitlin, thank you very much for speaking to me at this late hour in your, I'm assuming, hotel lobby, or have you made it all the way back to your room by now?
No, I'm in the hotel lobby, but weirdly, I'm not alone. I don't know why other journalists are down here working on stuff. You guys need to go to sleep. I'm looking at them right now. So, I'm in the hotel lobby. I'm going to head to my room, though, now.
Very nice. Well, Caitlin, thank you very much. As you said, people can read your match recap at The Guardian. I'm sure that's where you will be continuing to post content in the lead up to the Spain game.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I will have some analysis tomorrow, actually. I got to write that, too. I forgot about that. So thanks for the reminder.
My pleasure, and I also apologize for reminding you of that, I guess.
It's okay.